Tonight, the valley feels older, not darker, not louder, older, as if the silence itself has been listening. Through every chapter, through every quiet step taken before, the wilderness has remained patient, but patience leaves marks, and now those marks begin to show. You have journeyed through the earlier parts. You may sense it. This is no longer just a story of waiting. It is a story of consequence. Welcome back to the Three Rivers country. If this is your first night here, you have arrived where silence carries memory. You do not need to trace every path behind us. You do not need to recall every moment. Just allow the atmosphere to surround you. Before we continue, take one slow breath in and let it go gently. Let your thoughts loosen. Let your body grow heavier. There is nothing you must hold on to tonight, only the rhythm of distant water, only the steady unfolding of the wilderness. In part 6, what has settled begins to move again, not with urgency, but with inevitability. The valley does not rush, and neither will we. So let the words carry you, let the quiet guide you, and if sleep comes before the final page, that is exactly where you are meant to be. Now, we return once more to the Valley of Silent Men, Part 6. The sort of thing that was ahead of them. Then came that death, winter, in Lost City. You know better than I what the laws were in those days, Fingers. Food failed to come up. Snow came early. The thermometer never rose over 50 below zero for 3 straight months. And Lost City was an inferno of starvation and death. You could go out and kill a man then, and perhaps get away with it, Fingers. But if you stole so much as a crust of bread or a single bean, you were taken to the edge of the camp and told to go. And it meant certain death, death from hunger and cold, more terrible than shooting or hanging, and for that reason it was the penalty for theft. That man was not a thief. It was seeing his young wife slowly dying of hunger, and his horror at the thought of seeing her fall, as others were falling, a victim to scurvy, that made him steal. He broke into a cabin in the dead of night and stole 2 cans of beans and a pan of potatoes, more precious than 1,000 times their weight in gold, and he was caught. Of course, there was the wife, but those were the days. Women could not save a man, no matter how lovely she was. That man was taken to the edge of camp and given his pack, had his gun, but no food. And the girl, hooded and booted, was at his side, for she was determined to die with him. For her sake, Tatman had lied up to the last minute, protesting his innocence. But the beans and the potatoes were found in his cabin, and there was evidence. And then Fingers. Now and then a Superman is born on Earth, and a Superman was there in that crowd of hunger-stricken and embittered men. At the last moment he stepped out and in a loud voice declared that Tatman was innocent and that he was guilty. Unafraid, he made a remarkable confession. He had stolen the beans and the potatoes and had slipped them into the Tatman cabin when they were asleep. Why? Because he wanted to save the woman from hunger. Yes, he lied, Fingers. He lied because he loved the wife that belonged to another man, lied because in him there was a heart, as true as any heart God ever made. He lied, and his lie was a splendid thing. He went out into that blizzard, strengthened by a love that was greater than his fear of death, and the camp never heard of him again. Tatman and his wife returned to their cabin and lived. Fingers. Kent whirled suddenly from the window. Fingers. Fingers. Like a sphinx, sat and stared at Kent. You were that man, Kent went on, coming nearer to him. You lied because you loved a woman, and you went out to face death because of that woman. The men at Lost City did not know it, Fingers. The husband did not know it. And the girl, that girl wife you worshipped in secret, did not dream of it. But that was the truth, and you know it deep down in your soul. You fought your way out. You lived. And all these years, down here on your porch, you have been dreaming of a woman, of the girl you were willing to die for a long time ago. Fingers, am I right? And if I am, will you shake hands? Slowly Fingers had arisen from his chair. No longer were his eyes dull and lifeless, but flaming with a fire that Kent had lighted again after many years. And he reached out a hand and gripped Kent's, still staring at him as though something had come back to him from the dead. I thank you, Kent, for your opinion of that man, he said. Somehow you have not made me ashamed, but it was only the shell of a man that won out after that day. When I took Tatman's place, something happened. I do not know what, but you see me now. I never went back into the diggings. I degenerated. I became what I am. And you are today just what you were when you went out to die for Mary Tatman, cried Kent. The same heart and the same soul are in you. Would not you fight again today for her? A stifled cry came from Fingers' lips. My God, yes, Kent, I would. And that is why I wanted you, of all men, to come to me, Fingers. Kent went on swiftly. To you, of all the men on earth, I wanted to tell my story. And now, will you listen to it? Will you forgive me for bringing up this memory that must be precious to you? Only that you might more fully understand what I am going to say. I do not want you to think of it as a subterfuge on my part. It is more than that. It is, Fingers, is it inspiration? Listen and tell me. And for a long time after that, James Kent talked, and Fingers listened, the soul within him writhing and dragging itself back into fierce life, demanding for the first time in many years the something which it had once possessed, but which it was not the lazy, mysterious, silent, dirty Fingers who sat in the cell with Kent. In him, the spirit of 20 years ago had roused itself from long slumber, and the thrill of it pounded in his blood. Two-fisted Fingers, they had called him then, and he was two-fisted Fingers in this hour with Kent. Twice, Father Leon came to the head of the cell alcove, but turned back when he heard the low and steady murmur of Kent's voice. Nothing did Kent keep hidden, and when he'd finished, something that was like the fire of a revelation had come into Fingers' face. My God, he breathed deeply. Kent, I've been sitting down there on my porch a long time, and a good many strange things have come to me, but never anything like this. Oh, if it was not for this accursed flesh of mine. He jumped from his chair more quickly than he had moved in 10 years, and he laughed as he had not laughed in all that time. He thrust out a great arm and did up like a prize fighter testing his muscle. Old? I'm not old. I was only 28 when that happened up there, and I am 48 now. That is not old. It is what is in me that is grown old. I will do it, Kent. I will do it, if I hang for it. Kent fairly leaped upon him. God bless you, he cried huskily. God bless you, Fingers. Look at that. He pulled Fingers to the little window, and together they looked out upon the river, shimmering gloriously under a sun-filled sky of blue. 2,000 miles of it, he breathed. 2,000 miles of it, running straight through the heart of that world we both have known. No, you are not old, Fingers. The things you used to know are calling you again, as they are calling me. For somewhere off there are the ghosts of lost city, the ghosts and realities. Oh, ghosts and hopes, said Fingers. Hopes make life, softly whispered Kent, as if to himself, and then, without turning from the window, his hand found Fingers and clasped it tight. It may be that mine, like yours, will never come true, but they are fine to think about, Fingers. Funny, is not it, that their names should be so strangely alike, Mary and Murray? I say, Fingers. Heavy footsteps sounded in the hall. Both turned from the window as Constable Pelly came to the door of the cell. They recognized this intimation that their time was up, and with his foot, Fingers roused his sleeping dog. It was a new Fingers who walked back to the river 5 minutes later, and it was an amazed and discomfited dog who followed at his heels, for at times the misshapen and flesh-ridden Togs was compelled to trot for a few steps to keep up, and Finger did not sink into the chair on the shady porch when he reached his shack. He threw off his coat and waistcoat and rolled up his sleeves, and for hours after that he was buried deep in the accumulated masses of dust-covered legal treasures stored away in hidden corners of the good old Queen Bess. Chapter 12. That morning Kent had heard wild songs floating up from the river, and now he felt like shouting forth his own joy and exultation in song. He wondered if he could hide the truth from the eyes of others, and especially from Kedsty if he came to see him. It seemed that some glimmer of the hope blazing within him must surely reveal itself, no matter how he tried to hold it back. He felt the vital forces of that hope more powerful within him now than in the hour when he had crept from the hospital window with freedom in his face. For then he was not sure of himself. He had not tested his physical strength, and in the present moment, fanned by his unbounded optimism, the thought came to him that perhaps it was good luck and not bad that had thrown Mercer in his way. For with Fingers behind him now, his chances for a clean getaway were better. He would not be taking a hazardous leap chanced on the immediate smiles of fortune. He would be going deliberately, prepared. He blessed the man who had been known as Dirty Fingers, but whom he could not think of now in the terms of that name. He blessed the day He had heard a chance story of fingers far north. He no longer regarded him as the fat pig of a man he had been for so many years, for he looked upon the miracle of a great awakening. He had seen the soul of fingers lift itself up out of its tabernacle of flesh and grow young again. He had seen stagnant blood race with new fire. He had seen emotions roused that had slept for long years, and he felt toward fingers in the face of that awakening differently than he had felt toward any other living man. His emotion was one of deep and embracing comradeship. Father Leon did not come again until afternoon, and then he brought information that thrilled Kent. The missioner had walked down to see Fingers, and Fingers was not on his porch, neither was the dog. He had knocked loudly on the door, but there was no answer. Where was Fingers? Kent shook his head, feigning an anxious questioning, but inside him his heart was leaping. He knew. He told Father Leon. He was afraid all Fungus' knowledge of the law could do him but little good. That Fungus had told him as much, and the little missioner went away considerably depressed. He would talk with Fingers again, he said, and offer certain suggestions he had in mind. Kent chuckled when he was gone. How shocked Lepelle would be if he too could know. The next morning Father Leon came again, and his information was even more thrilling to Kent. The missioner was displeased with Fingers. Last night, noticing a light in his shack, he had walked down to see him, and he had found 3 men closely drawn up about a table with dirty Fingers. One of them was Ponte, the half-breed. Another was Canoe, the outcast dog rib from over on Sand Creek. The third was Mui, the old Indian trailer. Kent wanted to jump up and shout, for those 3 were the 3 greatest trailers in all that part of the Northland. Fingers had lost no time, and he wanted to voice his approbation, like a small boy on the 4th of July. But his face, seen by Father Leon, betrayed none of the excitement that was in his blood. Fingers had told him he was going into a timber deal with these men, a long-distance deal where there would be much traveling, and that he could not interrupt himself just then to talk about Kent. Would Father Leon come again in the morning? And he had gone again that morning, and Fingers' place was locked up. All the rest of the day Kent waited eagerly for Fingers. For the first time Ketsty came to see him, and as a matter of courtesy said he hoped Fingers might be of assistance to him. He did not mention Mercer, and remained no longer than a couple of minutes, standing outside the cell. In the afternoon, Dr. Cardigan came and shook hands warmly with Kent. He had found a tough job waiting for him, he said. Mercer was all cut up, in a literal as well as a mental way. He had 5 teeth missing, and he had to have 17 stitches taken in his face. It was Cardigan's opinion that someone had given him a considerable beating, and he grinned at Kent. Then he added in a whisper, "My God, Kent, how I wish you had made it." It was 4 o'clock when Fingers came. Even less than yesterday did he look like the old Fingers. He was not wheezing. He seemed to have lost flesh. His face was alive. That was what struck Kent, the new life in it. There was color in his eyes. And Togs, the dog, was not with him. He smiled when he shook hands with Kent, and nodded, and chuckled. and Kent, after that, gripped him by the shoulders and shook him in his silent joy. "I was up all last night," said Fingers in a low voice. "I do not dare move much in the day, or people will wonder. But God bless my soul, I did move last night, Kent. I must walk 10 miles more or less, and things are coming, and Pontikinumui are working like devils," whispered Fingers. "It is the only way, Kent. I have gone through all my law, and there is nothing in man-made law that can save you." "I have read your confession, and I do not think you could even get off the penitentiary. The noose is already tied around your neck. I think you would hang. We have simply got to get you out some other way." "I have had a talk with Kedsty. He has made arrangements to have you sent to Edmonton 2 weeks from tomorrow. We will need all that time, but it is enough." For 3 days thereafter, Fingers came to Kent's cell each afternoon, and each time was looking better. Something was swiftly putting hardness into his flesh and form into his body. The second day he told Kent that he had found the way at last, and that when the hour came, escape would be easy, but he thought it best not to let Kent in on the little secret just yet. He must be patient and have faith. That was the chief thing, to have faith at all times, no matter what happened. Several times he emphasized that, no matter what happens. The third day he puzzled Kent. He was restless, a bit nervous. He still thought it best not to tell Kent what his scheme was until tomorrow. He was in the cell not more than 5 or 10 minutes, and there was an unusual pressure in the grip of his hand when he bade Kent goodbye. Somehow Kent did not feel so well when he had gone. He waited impatiently for the next day. It came. Hour after hour he listened for Fingers' heavy tread in the hall. The morning passed. The afternoon lengthened. Night came. And Fingers had not come. Kent did not sleep much between the hour when he went to bed and morning. Before he left, Kent gave him a brief note for Fingers. He had just finished his dinner, and Carter had taken the dishes away when Father Leon returned. A look at his face, and Kent knew that he bore unpleasant tidings. "Fingers is an apostate," he said, his lips twitching, as if to keep back a denunciation still more emphatic. "He was sitting on his porch again this morning, half asleep, and says that after a great deal of thought, he has come to the definite opinion that he can do nothing for you. He read your note and burned it with a match. He asked me to tell you that the scheme he had in mind was too risky. For him, he says he will not come up again." And the missioner was rubbing his brown, knotted hands together raspingly. "Go on," said Kent, a little thickly. "He has also sent Inspector Kedsty. The same word," finished Father Leon. "His word to Kedsty is that he can see no fighting chance for you, and that it is useless effort on his part to put up a defense for you, Jimmy." His hand touched Kent's arm gently. Kent's face was white. He faced the window, and for a space he did not see. Then with pencil and paper, he wrote again to Fingers. It was late in the afternoon before Father Leon returned with an answer. Again, it was verbal. Fingers had read his note and had burned it with a match. He was particular that the last scrap of it was turned into ash, the missioner said, and he had nothing to say to Kent that he had not previously said. He simply could not go on with their plans, and he requested Kent not to write to him again. He was sorry, but that was his definite stand in the matter. Even then, Kent could not bring himself to believe. All the rest of the day he tried to put himself in Finger's brain, but his old trick of losing his personality in that of another failed him this time. He could find no reason for the sudden change in Fingers, unless it was what Fingers had frankly confessed to Father Leon, fear. The influence of mind in this instance had failed in its assault upon a mass of matter. Fingers' nerve had gone back on him. The fifth day, Kent rose from his cot, with hope still not quite dead in his heart. But that day passed, and the sixth, and the missioner brought word. On the seventh day came the final crash to Kent's hopes. Ketsty's program had changed. He, Kent, was to start for Edmonton the following morning, under charge of Pelly and a special constable. After this, Kent felt a strange change come over him. Years seemed to multiply themselves in his body. His mind, beaten back, no longer continued in its old channels of thought. The thing pressed upon him now as fatalistic. Fingers had failed him. Fortune had failed him. Everything had failed, and for the first time in the weeks of his struggle against death and a thing worse than death, he cursed himself. There was a limit to optimism and a limit to hope. His limit was reached. In the afternoon of this seventh day came a depressing gloom. It was filled with a drizzling rain. Hour after hour, this drizzle kept up, thickening as the night came. He ate his supper by the light of a cell lamp. By 8 o'clock, it was black outside. In that blackness, there was an occasional flash of lightning and rumble of thunder. On the roof of the barracks, the rain beat steadily and monotonously. His watch was in his hand. It was 9:15 o'clock when he heard the door at the far exit of the hall open and close. He had heard it a dozen times since supper, and paid no attention to it, but this time it was followed by a voice at the detachment office that hit him like an electrical shock. Then, a moment later, came low laughter. It was a woman who laughed. He stood up. He heard the detachment office door close, and silence followed. The watch in his hand seemed ticking off the seconds. The frantic noise. He shoved it into his pocket and stood staring out into the prison alcove. A few minutes later, the office door opened again. This time it was not closed. He heard distinctly a few light, hesitating footsteps, and his heart seemed to stop its beating. They came to the head. They came to the head. Another moment, and Kent was staring through the bars into the glorious eyes of Marette Radisson. In that moment Kent did not speak. He made no sound. He gave no sign of welcome, but stood in the middle of his cell, staring. If life had hung upon speech in those few seconds, he would have died. But everything he would have said, and more, was in his face. The girl must have seen it. With her 2 hands she was gripping at the bars of the cell, and looking through at him. Kent saw that her face was pale in the lamp glow. In that pallor, her violet eyes were like pools of black. The hood of her dripping raincoat was thrown partly back, and against the whiteness of her cheeks her hair glistened wet, and her long lashes were heavy with the rain. Kent, without moving over the narrow space between them, reached out his hands and found his voice. Maret. Her hands had tightened about the bars until they were bloodless. Her lips were parted. She was breathing quickly, but she did not smile. She made no response to his greeting, gave no sign even of recognition. What happened after that was so sudden and amazing that his heart stopped dead still. Without warning, she stepped back from the cell and began to scream, and then drew away from him, still facing him and still screaming as if something had terrified her. Kent heard the crash of a chair in the detachment office, excited voices, and the running of feet. Maret Radisson had withdrawn to the far corner of the alcove, and as Carter and Pelly ran toward her, she stood, a picture of horror, pointing at Kent's cell. The two constables rushed past her. Close behind them followed the special officer, detailed to take Kent to Edmonton. Kent had not moved. He was like one petrified. Close up against the bars came the faces of Pelly, Carter, and the special constable, filled with the expressions of men who had expected to look in upon tragedy. And then, behind their backs, Kent saw the other thing happen. Swift as a flash, Maret Radisson's hand went in and out of her raincoat, and at the backs of the three men she was leveling a revolver. Not only did Kent see that swift change, but the still swifter change that came into her face. Her eyes shot to his just once, and they were filled with a laughing, exultant fire. With one mighty throb, Kent's heart seemed to leap out through the bars of his prison, and at the look in his face and eyes, Carter swung suddenly around. "Please do not make any disturbance, gentlemen," said Maret Radisson. "The first man that makes a suspicious move, I shall kill." Her voice was calm and thrilling. It had the deadly ring in it. The revolver in her hand was held steadily. It was a slim-barreled black thing. The very color of it was menacing, and behind it were the girl's eyes, pools of flame. The three men were facing them now, shocked to speechlessness. Automatically, they seemed to obey her command to throw up their hands. Then she leveled her grim little gun straight at Pelly's heart. "You have the key," she said. "Unlock the cell." Pelly fumbled and produced the key. She watched him closely. Then suddenly, the special constable dropped his arms with a coarse laugh. "A pretty trick," he said. "The bluff will not work." "Oh, but it will," came the reply. The little black gun was shifted to him, even as the constable's fingers touched his revolver holster. With half-smiling lips, Maret's eyes blazed at him. "Please put up your hands," she commanded. The constable hesitated. Then his fingers gripped the butt of his gun. Kent, holding his breath, saw the almost imperceptible tensing of Maret's body and the wavering of Pelly's arms over his head. Another moment, and he, too, would have called the bluff, if it were that. But that moment did not come. From the slim black barrel of the girl's revolver leaped forth a sudden spurt of smoke and flame, and the special constable lurched back against the cell bars, caught himself as he half fell, and then stood with his pistol arm hanging limp and useless at his side. He had not made a sound, but his face was twisted in pain. "Open the cell door." Second time, the deadly-looking little gun was pointed straight at Pelly's heart. The half-smile was gone from the girl's lips now. Her eyes blazed a deeper fire. She was breathing quickly, and as she leaned a little toward Pelly, repeating her command, the words were partly drowned in a sudden crash of thunder. But Pelly understood. He saw her lips form the words, and half heard, "Open the door, or I shall kill you." He no longer hesitated. The key grated in the lock, and Kent himself flung the door wide open and sprang out. He was quick to see and seize upon opportunity, and swift to act. The astounding audacity of the girl's ruse, her clever acting in feigning horror to line the guards up at the cell door, and the thrilling decisiveness with which she had used the little black gun in her hand, set every drop of blood in his body afire. No sooner was he outside his cell than he was the old Jim Kent, fighting man. He whipped Carter's automatic out of its holster, and uncovering Pelly and the special constable, relieved them of their guns. Behind him he heard Marette's voice, calm and triumphant. "Lock them in the cell, Mr. Kent." He did not look at her, but swung his gun on Pelly and the special constable, and they backed through the door into the cell. Carter had not moved. He was looking straight at the girl, and the little black gun was leveled at his breast. Pelly and the wounded man did not see, but on Carter's lips was a strange smile. His eyes met Kent's, and there was revealed for an instant a silent flash of comradeship and an unmistakable something else. Carter was glad. It made Kent want to reach out and grip his hand, but in place of that, he backed him into the cell, turned the key in the lock, and with the key in his hand, faced Marette. Her eyes were shining gloriously. He had never seen such splendid, fighting eyes, nor the bird-like swiftness with which she turned, ran down the hall, calling him to follow her. He was only a step behind her in passing Kedsty's office. She reached the outer door and opened it. It was pitch dark outside, and a deluge of rain beat into their faces. He observed that she did not replace the hood of her raincoat when she darted out. As he closed the door, her hand groped to his arm, and from that found his hand. Her fingers clung to his tightly. He did not ask questions as they faced the black chaos of rain. A renting streak of lightning revealed her for an instant, her bare head bowed to the wind. Then came a crash of thunder that shook the earth under their feet, and her fingers closed more tightly about his hand. And in that crash he heard her voice, half laughing, half broken, saying, "I am afraid of thunder." In that storm his laugh rang out, a great, free, joyous laugh. He wanted to stop in that instant, sweep her up into his arms, and carry her. He wanted to shout like an insane man in his mad joy. And a moment before, she had risked everything in facing 3 of the bravest men in the service, and had shot one of them. He started to say something, but she increased her speed until she was almost running. She was not leading Jem in the direction of the river, but toward the forest beyond Kedsty's bungalow. Not for an instant did she falter in that drenched and impenetrable darkness. There was something imperative in the clasp of her fingers, even though they tightened perceptibly in the thunder crashed. They gave Kent the conviction that there was no doubt in her mind as to the point she was striving for. He took advantage of the lightning, for each time it gave him a glimpse of her bare, wet head, bowed to the storm, her white profile, and a slim figure fighting over the sticky earth under her feet. It was this presence of her, and not the thought of escape, that exalted him now. She was at his side. Her hand lay close in his. The lightning gave him glimpses of her. He felt the touch of her shoulder, her arm, her body, as they drew close together. The life and warmth and thrill of her seemed to leap into his own veins through the hand he held. He had dreamed of her, and now suddenly she had become a part of him, and the glory of Fifth rode overwhelmingly over all other emotions that were struggling in his brain. The glory of the thought that it was she who had come to him in the last moment, who had saved him, and who was now leading him to freedom. Crash of storm. At the crest of a low knoll between barracks and Kedsty's bungalow, she stopped for the first time. He had there again the almost irresistible impulse to reach out in the darkness and take her into his arms, crying out to her of his joy, of a happiness that had come to him, greater even than the happiness of freedom. But he stood, holding her hand, his tongue speechless, that he was looking at her, when the lightning revealed her again. In a rending flash, it cut open the night, so close that the hiss of it was like the passing of a giant rocket, and involuntarily she shrank against him, and her free hand caught his arm. At the instant, thunder crashed low over their heads. His own hand roped out, and in the blackness it touched for an instant her wet face, and then her drenched hair. "Marette," he cried, "where are we going?" "Down there," came her voice. Her hand had left his arm, and he sensed that she was pointing, though he could not see. And now the night settles again. This stillness feels different, not unfinished, not unresolved, but preparing. What has unfolded tonight has not closed a door. It has opened one, quietly, without announcement, without noise. If you are still awake, you may feel that subtle shift. The wilderness has not finished speaking. It has only lowered its voice. There are deeper currents beneath these calm waters, deeper silences within these trees, and in the next part, those depths may begin to surface, not violently, not suddenly, but unmistakably. The valley remembers, and memory has weight, but for now, you release that weight. Let the questions drift away. Let the anticipation soften into calm. There is nothing you need to prepare for. The next chapter will wait for you. It always does. So breathe slowly. Let your body sink deeper. Let the wilderness become a distant dream. And when you are ready to return, part 7 will be here, waiting quietly. Sleep peacefully, and I will meet you again, where silence begins to speak louder than words.